one of which is what NERSA will say. Because it will determine Eskom's sustainability moving forward. And I'm a practical person in life. I know what to expect in this. If I were to say, oh, Eskom, you've got a case, have 32, I don't know what they're going to say. My practical mind says the politicians are going to say, no, that's too much. Right? But if they say to Eskom that's too much, we've got to say, what is the bottom line impact on the consumer, but at the same time, allow Eskom to be sustainable. Because in future, I don't want an Eskom that comes back to me after settling that debt. So from that financial point of view, we're working hard with Eskom. And I'm told, interesting enough, by journalists, your colleagues can tell me. So that's how bureaucrats work. So I need, by that date, to be able to be explicit. There was a market expectation in October was that I was going to be explicit. I can't continue to dilly-dally. I must be explicit on that day. In the meantime, what needs to be done? We've got to assess what are these operational inefficiencies, if any, in Eskom, because our takeover date will have to have the people in the finance sector said conditions precedent. So we look to do that assessment. The next set of on plant performance. The third element to that, I'm not sure whether Eskom is the right vehicle for that, is new capacity. So I don't care who delivers that new capacity, whether somebody from Mars. Another constraint, which is becoming another Eskom, is the logistics sector. If you ask the coal guys, miners, they will tell you that since 1996, they've always between 2021, we're at where we were in 1996, but just going over 50 million tons. The prediction is that this year we'll have 49. That's a cost to the economy in the form of revenue for business, in the form of tax for me. Some of them are, I'm going to come back to both Eskom, some of them are not their own creation. I'll come back to that. So we're going to force deals, logistics, both rail and ports, to give us, the estimate by the mining industry is that if they were to have what they call they would have made 150 billion more this year, and I would have got 27 billion more on revenue. So there are operational issues, issues beyond their control. I was saying last night, there are two issues which is the regulatory environment, which we need to sort out. But the operational inefficiencies are theirs. The third element, which is not theirs, is crime, is facing difficulties because of crime and corruption. Now, that affects both Eskom from our side. The last issue I raised there was the weak state capacity. I'm going to come back to that when I deal. One of the key things that we're beginning to focus on is the infrastructure spending. Municipalities, they've got 68 billion of that. The provinces have got about 63. State-owned enterprises have got about 73 billion. Wow. Then what I mean, then, to do this thing, let me take a step. I'm going to come back to the infrastructure issues. What then is needed? We have got is trade patterns. Both the global financial crisis and made it clear that our economy is too vulnerable because historically it's an economy which has trade links to lose about 2 million jobs. So it's not diversified enough. Part of that diversification is to how to make sure that change that diversification to reduce that vulnerability. When we talk about economic transformation, we don't only talk about black economic empowerment, we talk about also reducing this vulnerability. The second point, whether it's ownership, whether anything, those things cannot be pushed to the back of the agenda. How you do it, though, is a matter of detail in such a manner that it should not be an obstacle to growth. But the outcome of all of these things must lead to employment. Must lead to employment. If you were to have a booming economy tomorrow, where would you get the skilled people you require? It's a matter of that needs attention. We've got a system of vocational training which is not linked to practical skills. And as a result, roughly about 1 million of these people that are unemployed have got this training, some attention, that skills. We need also to focus on small and medium enterprises. It's a matter which is attended by everybody, but no one, and we're not achieved. You can go to a national, to a province, to a local government, and there's some work, there's some funding, but it's uncoordinated and therefore not making the right impact. In the light of the bounce back scheme, which was intended for small enterprise in any frame, from the guy who's going to get a loan from 10,000, 10 million. How do you refocus that bounce back scheme so that townships and small and medium enterprise can access this money, which is guaranteed by government, to switch into whether solar or any other renewables in their works, so that no trading. And undermining small business a great deal. So it's something we're thinking, refocus the bounce back scheme to support small and medium enterprise. Let me just make some few points so that I allow you to ask me as much as you can. One thing I've learned as a politician is to speak. I didn't look at the program. It turns that poor people expected me to do the opening remarks for 10 minutes, and I spoke for 1 hour, 10 minutes. That's me. So, let me come back to the infrastructure. I said I've got this 247 billion rand. I was asking my people, why can't I see stop and goes? Years we were spending about 12 billion rand on building the R52 from Kokstad to Matatia, building another 1.5 to 1.8 billion rand in Tentu River Bridge. We will also be starting the Mzimvubu Dam, all of those things are in close proximity. So that area alone will be, over the next 3 years, benefit from. Here's the challenge, is capacity to spend. We publish every quarter what is called Section 32 reports on our website, which show the current spending patterns. They don't look good. We publish Section 71 for municipalities, which show that capacity. But we're also on the investment front, trying to crowd in. We're talking to the Asisagas, which is insurance and pensions, crowd their investment into the social infrastructure space. As I close, climate change is with us. Stuff is climate variability. I said, you may be correct, but the frequency suggests something else. The frequency suggests something else that needs to be attended to. As you are aware, the developed world are now everybody was excited. However, it remains one thing, it remains that. It remains one thing, it remains that. I must confess that in certain areas, in certain countries, and a component of that is a component of that is grants small. Let me just tell you my picture of this stuff. If you look at South Africa, you are going to do this decarbonization process. We have got 13 power stations in SEC. Forget about the ones that are exporting. Now, if we had to decommission those things, which we are, there's no option. What is, in other words, you need an alternative development model for the area. Despite the excitement about Komati projects, I'm not, in terms of employment and social impact. All right? So what you do need is another development developed world must help us with. Resources also to look at what is that kind of development model for us to be able to do that. They promised. In Cancun, they said they're going to give us 100 billion per annum. In Paris, they said, yes, we're going to develop a quantum. What that quantum is, we'll figure. Colleague Barbara Chris in COP27, is there anything new coming? I couldn't find. He says, look, it's less precise as it has been. And the moral argument has been that the gas, emissions have been caused by the developed world. Play it and say, look, if we have got to move all of us together, you know, there's a German economist, Friedrich List. Friedrich List made an important point because he was in the USA and grew up during the time of Secretary Hamilton. Old times. I think Secretaries are finished in 1785 or something, but I can't remember the title now, but I have it. He says, the problem with the model you're proposing now of this free trade at the time and doing this, he says, you're actually saying you've used a particular ladder for your growth. You've used a particular ladder for your growth, but you're pulling it down for us, not to send the use. Pulling the data is borrowed from Hajun Shung's title his book that, but he borrowed from Friedrich List. So we've got this debate and dialogue on the developing world. So this is an important debate we want to place on the table. We continue to place on the speech on the 6th of October. Has placed another thing on the agenda, which I think the G7s now have accepted it, that the review of the multinational development institutions. Now, it's a matter which we discussed on the 11th of October with her. You had some ministers of finance, and because we may not have the same definition of what that means. And I conclude, you know, we wish to assure you that we are on a course at a political level to rebuild, renew the African National Congress so that it should be able to provide the leadership it has done. Coalitions that are unreliable do not, if our experience in municipalities is bad. The second component of that is to grow this economy. What did it mean to grow this economy? The third element of that, as we grow this economy, to continue to provide support to those that are vulnerable in our society. The necessary trade-offs. So, thank you very much, Sipho.
Thank you. Thank you, Putina. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Putinok, please join your seat here on the stage, Putinok. You can't run away. It's too early. You can sit here. Thanks, Putinok, and thank you for the team is having the roving mics. Before we invite everyone to ask questions, we designed the brochures for the conference. PBF has designed the brochures for the conference. On your seats, you'll see there's this brochure. We also have the PBF magazine and the PBF prospectus. This brochure is giving you an idea in terms of visitors. We have put Enoch as part of driving the township economy. We have invited township businesses to come and exhibit, and PBF has made sure that they exhibit for free, so that we give them an exposure. Let me invite, if there's any questions, please show of hands, and just name, say name, introduce us. And then there's a gentleman, that will be number 2. And then I've seen a hand here, that will be number 3. And then there'll be number 4. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Thank you so much, convener. Minister, my name is Ntombi Mbele. I'm the Economic and Trade Advisor at the Embassy of Switzerland. Thank you for giving us a great lay of the land of what's going on with the fiscus. 2 questions, Minister. The first one is, what is the status quo on the second question? Like Putsipo had mentioned, that the Treasury will be quite integral with the just transitions in the township economy. What are the specific programs that your team will coordinate with the township economy sector, with business sector, as well as with the other state departments? Because we sometimes suspect that there's not much coordination that we are seeing from the
gentleman.
Morning, Minister. My name is Michael. I'm from Singo Investment Holdings. I was waiting for your elaboration on the issue of Eskom. You said we are 14 years in the load shedding, and you have spent 230 billion rand. I was sitting here. What do you think can solve our Eskom problem? Because really, if you are telling us it's affecting the performance of 40% business, I'll be scared if I were you. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a gentleman behind cameras. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tepo Mongwe from SABC.
Oh, okay.
You are in talks with the creditors at Eskom. Can you update us as to how those negotiations are going in terms of, as you indicated a short while ago, that you are determined to take that portion of the Eskom debt? Thank you.
Thank you. And then there's, okay. Okay, let's allow the, we'll have another round. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Velim Tiane from the SABC News. Considering the situation that we are currently observing around the conference, which is the deepening of the factions, and my question is the change, if there will be any, of the ANC leadership, how is it going to affect this conference, and how is that going to impact on the investor confidence? And lastly, how is the party going to ensure that whoever emerges victorious in this conference in terms of the leadership, but all things remain the same in terms of the progress that is being made so far? Thanks.
Thank you. Let me invite the minister to respond to the questions. We have 4 questions. Minister.
As we have indicated, in terms of the public sector wage bill, we, from a government perspective, we've settled for this year. We have even penciled the carry-through cost of the 3% into the next year. If you read the budget documents, you'll see that there's a 14 billion for the next financial year with unions as soon as possible. Let me tell you why. Even here in the conference, a number of people are pulling me aside. I said, but you're going to take the 1,000 Rand allowance in April, which I'm going to take. Yeah, that's because it's a 1-year dispensation. We close that chapter, and if we decide to continue with the 1,000, it's a matter that we can agree with unions. But at the moment, we're not talking. The second question about coordination of the just transition. The just transition coordination is led by my colleague, Barbara Chris. I'm the township economy. My sense, the level of development of the township economy is uneven across the country. Gauteng has done a lot, including a legislation. We have been working well with Pax Tau in the Gauteng space and coordinating with them. And again, we allow them to lead because it's their own activity. Eskom solution, I've said there are a couple of things that need to be done. The first thing we're going to do is to take some of their debt, which to make their balance sheet healthier in order for them to be able to go to the market with ease. The second thing that we're saying, we've got to get them to focus on is it Tsepo? Don't take him a chance. The discussion of the details of takeover of Eskom, including creditors, budget aim chart. Not today. I can't deal with that. I was on Bloomberg the other day. I said, by the way, only Mandela, we fired all the president other than Mandela. It's our nature, we may be seem chaotic. It's only Mandela who was safe, we never fired. We can't guarantee why this one won't be fired. So we can't do that, Zuma and so on. Is that as a party, unlike in the USA, where the policy belongs to the president, as a party, the policy belongs to the party. So irrespective of the change in government, the party will continue to pursue its policies, panicking an inch about who comes out. I've worked with all of the individuals that work. I've worked with Zweli as well. I've worked with the president. The interesting thing, the different lineups, if you ask me, I'm not worried an inch. Those are people who have got a better grasp of the challenges of this economy. Better grasp of the challenges of this economy. Knows Zweli, even during his time as Treasurer General, He was very active in coordinating businesses and so on and supportive. So I don't want to discredit any candidate there, but to say, if you ask me, change is not going to have, and we've had that change in the past, as I've indicated. People said, I said, no, it's in our nature, we're chaotic. The question again.
Thank you, Minister. We have a hand, the gentleman, the numbers are increasing. Yeah, I've pointed to Minister. And then let me give in the order 5, and then we close our session. Yes, you'll be number 6. Apologies. Okay, number 1, please.
Minister, thank you. Erin Bates here from Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. Firstly, you haven't touched on the July unrest of last year, and that was arguably when we saw most sharply ructions and tensions in the ANC throat. Secondly, the Auditor General results for this year, she reported some 12 billion rand lost to fraud and law breaking, and that is a conservative estimate, she said. What measures are being taken to improve government spending and accountability at a municipal level as well? And then finally, if you could please speak on the FTAF and the grey listing looming. What engagements have you had? I think you had a reporting on spending and then the grey listing issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not trying to limit the questions, at least if you can allow 2 questions so that we... Okay, the gentleman, number 2.
Good morning. Mashudu Sadiq, I'm from Independent Media. Minister, there has been a glaring question about that the ruling party doesn't have enough money to pay workers. And what is the status right now?
Okay, number 3. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Minister, recognizing the township economy, and thank you very much for supporting township economy. Yes, Comrade Pakstau and Comrade Makura did a wonderful work in giving us TIDA, the Township Economic Development Act, that we are now, making sure that we advocate, we promote, in terms of the township economy. But equally so, we just want to acknowledge and say, thank you very much, Putsipo, for Economic Pavilion, which we've got what we call the Township Economy House in Soweto. Because we are saying township economy, it's us. We are township economy. The people that are in the township are township economy. And we're saying township economy, it's equal to the main stream of economy. But Putsipo, thank you very much, my leader. We really appreciate. Thank you very much, PBF, and thank you very much, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Financial Counselor, and thank you very much for that insightful speech. My question would be, can you elaborate a little bit on the plan to attract and train skilled people that you mentioned to make the South African economy future-proof?
Thank you. And then the gentleman at the back.
No, thanks. My name is Sin. I just want to find out what is the position of our government in as far as a constitutional court confirmed the invalidity of BEE. What's going to happen going forward? I thank you.
Thank you. And then the gentleman number 6.
Good morning. I'm Tsepo Motswane from Nyamezela Metering. My question really is about trying to produce products. We know that the revised triple PFA does no longer require SOEs to, when you tender, they don't require you to have your products manufactured locally. So we are worried as a local producer of meters and across a couple of other sectors. What is the conversation going forward regarding...
Consulting with the minister on the issue of the ANC salaries from IOL. My understanding is that the employees are paid. Thank you. They are paid.
Thank you for that, Sipho. I was going to tell the gentleman the reason I'm not standing as the treasurer of the ANC is precisely it's an omission on the July unrest. Not only did it cost life, undermine the infrastructure, it also cost the economy a great deal. My estimate, if I include we had to recapitalize Sazria for 80 billion rand. So it's quite an important thing which we need to make sure that it does not recur. Not only for government, but for people. You know, most of the people who lost, that's what we're thinking now with Sazria. Most of the people who lost businesses are the people who are not insured, the people who are selling in the street and so on and so on. We need to make sure that it does not recur. I said we published 2 reports. I'll talk about the Secretary General, on the Auditor General. For provincial and national government, we published Section 32 report, which look at those spending reviews. Which, you know, and is unaccountable to another executive authority. What we've done starting from the 2nd of October or 2nd of November, every quarter now we go to cabinet and table the expenditure reviews. And that forces our colleagues to read. And one of them, as I was going on to cabinet on the 2nd, he calls me, says, so you've got to focus for people their attention on dealing with these matters. I was not saying my numbers are right or anything. They are free. His people are free to go and debate with my team. But the fact that I've been able to get him and his colleague and his team on the table to look at the budget and the spending areas is a major objective. That's what I wanted to achieve by taking to cabinet. There are 2 issues. The first one is the regulatory part. The second one relates to some action on the part of government. Within the shortest possible time, we've managed to pilot 3 pieces of legislation in Parliament, and then the NCO Commission to FATF. We also have got a story to tell on some of the work which has been done on dealing with corruption cases and so on and so on. Some of them were lifted in detail when the President made a submission on the Zondo Commission in Parliament. The Treasurer made a passing remark in his financial report to the NEC, which we think they've been paid. On the township economy, I want to encourage you to engage us. We didn't know that there's a structure to engage us. Let me just tell you an example. The short-term insurance cars. Don't want a car to be towed from Soweto to downtown. That exists. The skilled people. We've published a gazette. We've been talking to the Department of Home Affairs of what category of skills that should be allowed in South Africa. We published that list of skills. The intention is to achieve exactly those challenges are, but we've done that. Tick the box on reforms. The last 2 questions are related because they talk to the Constitutional Court judgment. What the Constitutional Court said is 2 things. I know people blame it rules against me, so unless. The Constitution gives you power to do all of these things you want to do. The Constitution gives you power to do all of these things you want to do. You chose to limit your powers in the triple PFMA, whatever FA. So you limited your powers yourself You then can't extend your powers via a secondary. That's what the Constitutional Court said. People are reading those judges. They just tell us what is true. I'm going to come back to tell you what the second thing they said. The Constitution says the people who procure are state organs, not you. So, state, the court said. Both points are correct, by the way. Both points are correct, by the way. So, what are we doing about that? We will submit to Cabinet and Parliament in March a new procurement bill. But before I do that, let me deal with the localization issue. Because each organ of the state must procure, but you must provide a framework for that procurement. What does that framework say? The framework is still there in the Federal Procurement Act. It says all of these things. If you go to Uhanki's here, I've had a long debate with the Black Business Council on this issue. All those regulations we've published, they take about specific goals. What are those specific goals? Are all the objectives we're talking about? But it then says a state organ must develop its own policy. Its own policy, but in taking into account those specific developmental goals and the objectives that were set up in the Construction and Development Program. Mind you, the bill was published not in the new dispensation when the specific goals were set out in the RDP Act. So, there's nothing that prevents a state organ not to do localization. If they're not doing it, just Eskom and Transnet. When we have said to them, develop your own procurement policy, your own. Every state organ, whether it's a department or anything, you must develop your own procurement framework in line with the national framework. So, has told us our own mistake. We limited our powers in the Preferential Procurement Act. Whereas the Constitution the Constitution gives you two kinds of preferences. Section 27(1)(a), but let me start with B of the Constitution, says is an empowerment thing for previously 7A, says you can also put any preferences of your choice, of categories of preferences of your choice. That's the constitutional dispensation in South Africa, which means if you wanted to have localization, it won't be unconstitutional. It will all not be unconstitutional. We limited ourselves in the Preferential Procurement Act. Granted, we did it in 2 months because it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. We are coming to the conclusion of our program, and let me take this opportunity to thank the PBF subscribers for attending this morning business breakfast. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the guests that were invited. We will be hosting the business breakfast on a regular basis. Tomorrow we'll be hosting the Minister of Energy, Comrade Gwede Madashe. He will be engaging with us. And then the day after, which is the 19th, we'll be hosting the Minister of Small Business, Ms. Stella Ndabeni. And then on the last day, we'll be hosting the Minister of ICT and Telecommunication, Minister Chabeni. So designed the business lounge. Those who wants to hang around in the business lounge, we have a nice place there. We also have meeting boardrooms for businesses who wants to have meetings. Feel free to be here. In that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me, on behalf of PBF, let me thank you for attending our business breakfast. Breakfast will be served. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't want your breakfast to get cold because I'll ask you one question just now at 9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock.
Yes, please.
At what time?
They're just doing headlines and then they will come to us.
It's going to be cold.
I will
I saw you early.
Yes, you did. I know you spoke to Koli already, but I just wanted to go back to the July issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're just doing headlines at the moment. Guys, are you going to come to us now, please? The minister's breakfast is getting cold. Thank you, by the way. Great. Right, they're just on the headlines now. It'll be another minute or so. Thank you, Minister.
Are you guys coming tomorrow?
He's ENCA, I'm Newsroom.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Guys, how long to us, please?
Are you up? When you move with us, when you move back. When you move, yes, thank you. You're rolling now. Leadership.
And you're confident your point on whoever comes policy persists is true?
Everywhere, anyone who wants to come has got an interest in succeeding. So I don't think any of those people who are contesting there do not want to prove that they can do things better.
Yes, guys, I'm here, standing by. Thank you, Minister.
When he was the Treasurer General and I was the chair of the economic transformation. We were very working quite well and everything was in sync. So that's why I'm saying largely I'm not panicking.
Okay. Because I think for the lay person, things are so factionalized that there's an assumption that different factions have very different economic...
A member of parliament who's not in the ruling party to go into a hall full of students and say, if we take over, we'll pay all your debt. We will do all sorts of things. Because you don't have that responsibility. When you get to the responsibility, you look at the resource envelope and the challenges facing the country, you take a rational approach.
And then, Minister, just to come back to the question of Jace, when you have the person whose incarceration had stoked a lot of that violence waltzing in midway through the current president of the ANC and indeed the country's speech and litigating against him.
You must understand there was an underlying problem.
But that underlying problem was escalated.
There was an underlying problem. The event was a trigger. Our people in such a manner that they cannot be triggered by any specific event. So that's a challenge. The event was a trigger of an underlying socio-economic problem. And I think what we need to be doing is to focus on the underlying issues.
Is that without dealing with the political issue, or is it two-pronged?
It's both. It's both. It creates anxiety in government circles at all levels. People who feel that, if the new guys are going to chase us away, there's instability. I know those perceptions, but some of them are not founded on reality. I've cited 2 examples where a president was fired without making any major impact on both the governance and the macroeconomic framework.
400 billion rand. What's going to happen with the debt?
No, I've been saying this thing time and again, that I'm not going to take all of it. I'm going to take a portion of that debt. What the quantum is will depend on a number of things, including what the NESA tariff will be. So those things will affect, because I must look at Eskom's sustainability in the long term. No, not to my knowledge. My guy in asset and liability would have informed me about such challenges, not to my knowledge.
Minister, could I ask you, sorry to butt in, on the question of diesel for Eskom, your processes, your appropriation processes take some time before, or are we in for stage 6 right up until
Let me just say,
the end of March?
Eskom is in discussion with my asset and liability team.
Yeah.
There's no discussion about a number at the moment. There are a number of scenarios which are on the table, which sometimes may not even make it unnecessary to go. For instance, if NESA makes a determination quite soon, the NESA decision is quite critical for us for those scenarios.
Minister, long-term volatility coming out of political volatility, talking about market volatility, does it concern you at all?
No. Were you here when I spoke? I said, we fire presidents, not something new. We fire them. And it does never have a major, Now that's an exception.
And the losses we've seen are similar at that level.
That's an exception that we can special. So, but in general, I think I'm not worried about that. There are other things we can create. For instance, the volatility on Eskom is more about the NESA delay than the CO. So,
Decision of Christmas Eve. They need to make that decision by Christmas Eve, and yet they keep delaying it.
so that's fine. If they've got a deadline, I'm quite happy. All I want is their decision. The sooner they make that decision, the better for me, because I must then start sharpening my pencils and say, how are we going to deal with things moving forward? and how do we stabilize the markets and so on and so on.
I'll phone you on Christmas Day to find out what you think.
Switch your phone on, Ramaphosa and Dr. Mkhize. But if there is a curveball nomination from the floor that makes its way to the end of the line for president, can we trust in your line around policy persists, whoever the person is?
Let me just say, whoever the person will pursue ANC policies. We don't have people having policies in their. So that happens with any presidential change. You see, the style of leadership and other things will impact, not broadly policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any preference?
No.
And if you had one, you wouldn't tell us?
No, I wouldn't tell you because.
Thanks very much. Minister of Finance, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Stretch my hand.
Mr. Gwede Mantashe will be speaking at that. So, of course, that also to be very closely monitored, not least because of all of the woes that Eskom is currently experiencing. And with that, it's back to you in studio.
Around 230 billion rand into power utilities. So they're saying that maybe not fixing Eskom, but rather fixing the power grid itself. Protect the capability.